fly. I be rolling with you, mommy, I be feeling the motion. When I'm inside you, I be deep as the ocean. When it comes to your love, can't lie, it be strong as a potion. That's why me and you forever be coasting. Let's roll. Co-pilot on the passenger side, be so fly. Yeah, she so lit, we so high. Just me and my chick, yeah. Just me and my chick, yeah. Co-pilot.
Yo, what's up, y'all? What's going on out there in the world, man? Yo, welcome to another one, man. It's your boy Rob One, and this is Sparking Conversation. With y'all know what I do each and every week, man. I get up here and I talk to some of the world's most interesting people. And y'all know tonight I ain't gonna fall short of that at all. Tonight gonna be a doozy, right? And I'm just saying that, you know what I mean, to let y'all know where we heading, because on this platform, I like to have conversations with everybody, right? And there's a thing, there's a fine line between what people consider conversation worthy, and then where it's like, yo, your morals or whatever is kind of intact based on, the topic, right? Because I'm not gonna lie, a lot of people reach out to me wanting to get on the platform. And whenever I want to know, like, all right, bet, so what's your talking point? Like, what do you want to really talk about? And then sometimes the stories that they want to talk about, I mean, I don't mind talking to people, period. You know what I mean? Because that's how you learn what's really going on out here. Because a lot of times people want to tell you things or tell somebody something because people are not really listening, right? But then you got those who really say things that's a really little bit not in your lane at all. So, you got to pick and choose wisely, but then you got to try to be a person that's non-judgmental and just figure out if it's a conversation for the people. So before I get into what we're going to talk about tonight, let me give thanks, like I do each and every week, to the people that download the audio version of this podcast. You know what I'm saying? Out there on Spotify, Apple Music, and the whole nine. But wherever you get your audio versions of your podcast, I appreciate y'all. Word? Because each and every week, it just keep going up and it keep getting, and I love that, right? Because then, listen, there's a lot of people out there that work in industries where they be on the road a lot. So, they can't really watch, but they got the option, right, to do so. But so many of them go to these streaming platforms and they download what they want to hear. And the fact that we in the mix like that, that's crazy. So I definitely appreciate y'all. You know what I mean? I'm on my 102nd show, right? Just consecutive, just kept moving forward, right? And not just allowing distractions to come in the way, not allowing like the way I think it's supposed to be, but really putting in the effort to be of service to other people, right? So thank y'all to all of y'all that download the audio version. And speaking of, service to other people. So thank you to all the people that click the links in the description. So before I get into my whole little rant, y'all know how I do. I want to say this too. So a lot of people that hit me up and they be like, yo, Rod, the audio version of your podcast, how do you get that where it need to go? So listen, I got a spot for y'all, right? So it's rss.com. It's RSS feed. That's what it's called, right? And this is what you can use. That link for the audio version of your podcast is what you can use to distribute to all the places that accept audio versions of podcasts. And y'all know that news come to the platforms first, because we know traditional news ain't giving us the real. They're giving us what they want us to hear. They do the same programming situation. They all reporting the same thing. And we know that the real go on the ground. So I got something for y'all. Y'all know it's a link coming, so don't worry about it. It'll be in the description of this video. So just hold tight, yo. We're going to make that shake for y'all. But let me clear my throat for this. Speaking of service to people, I know all y'all out there know what's going on when it comes down to the hurricane. I know how Hurricane Helene, she just came through eastern North Carolina, western North Carolina, my bad. And they said it was some damage on, eastern Tennessee too as well. So like Asheville and all that other places, y'all, let me tell y'all something, man. Like whatever they saying on the news, it ain't it. I'm going to be honest with y'all. Y'all know y'all got to go to the direct sources of people that's on the ground to really get the information. Now, the reason why I want to report on that, not just the fact they got another hurricane that's coming up right behind that's supposed to be tearing Florida apart. and this cat named Milton. Right, so they got another one that's supposed to be coming through. That's supposed to do what it's going to do to Florida. They're giving out mad warnings to Florida, telling people get out right now. If you don't get out right now, we're not coming to get you and all that. I don't even understand why they would put that out there to the sense of, and I don't know why people would stay. Now I go over a few scenarios in my head, and I want to make sure people understand that people in Florida, if they telling y'all to leave, they not gonna come get y'all. They not, because let me tell y'all what's going on over here in North Carolina. They not going to get people. It's everyday people going in there trying to help and save people. Now, is FEMA on the ground out there? Yeah, they out there, but they ain't doing nothing at all to help the people at all. Right? So there's independent cats. So you know in North Carolina, you got cats that got some spare change. And in their spare time, they like to do stuff that average people don't do, right? And I'm not saying average in the way that you are, how you look and all that. I'm just talking about, there are people out there who live in an apartment, but they drive a Mercedes Benz. But then you got people who are buy land, invest in certain things, get money. And when they get money, they buy stuff like helicopters. Imagine that. People got real, you know what I'm saying? Like, you don't know. It's mad people, not mad people, but it's a lot of people that got some spare change that got ways to get up out of here. And a lot of them are using independent ways to come help and save people. Now, they can't do it all. They're doing the best they can, right? They're doing the best they can out here. But the fact that they have to do it, right? You got to really put this in a certain perspective, yo. Like, listen, the way a hurricane ran through on dry land, I don't know. Like I said last show, I'm not a meteorologist. I know mad people out here feel like they know better. Some people got the little almanac and all that. And they be out here saying like they know what, man. No. As long as I've been living, and long as people know how to pay attention to things, there's never been a hurricane that lasted that long and that strong on dry land. Y'all bugging. So they keep talking about this weather modification going on out here. If y'all don't know that, then yeah, I don't know what else it is. But to the people in Florida, listen. There was a lady out here that it's in North Carolina. This lady, she has videos out there. Y'all could go look up. Y'all could go look up the lady, put Halloween costume lady, Asheville, North Carolina, and go look for yourself. You know what I'm saying? But she lives in a certain neighborhood where water is just flowing through, right? So in her, viewing of the water, she said that she looked out there and she thought it was Halloween costumes floating up and down the street, right? And the reason why she said that, because look, it's close to Halloween. She felt like people had stuff early, and because of the storm and all the stuff that was washed up, that was Halloween costumes. But upon further investigation, she figured out, nah, these ain't Halloween costumes. These was people. People. Do you understand what I'm saying? This was people floating down the street. Not Halloween costumes, yo. So the fact that I'm telling y'all, when it comes down to things that's going on out there, pay attention, y'all. Like, y'all got to really know what's major coming up. Is there anything major coming up that y'all could think of? Huh? Do y'all know? Right? So look, and then do y'all know that the people who, not people, but the states that are responsible, who could really make a difference in this election? Do y'all know that information? Right? So look, I'm just saying, I'm not pointing fingers. I'm not saying this, that, and the third. All I'm telling y'all is to pay attention. The people in Florida, if they giving y'all warnings to get out, please go. Word. Just go ahead and go, man. If you gotta just go. I don't know. Like the way that they say the trajectory is going, try to go where it ain't going. I don't know. You can't go to the eastern part right now, which it looks like that this one ain't going there, but you can't go there. As far as North Carolina is concerned, you're gonna have to go. Look, I don't know what it's gonna take, but y'all guys are gonna have to figure it out, man, and just get out the way. Please get out the way, yo, because y'all got alligators. You understand what I'm saying? Y'all got shit that could get in your house that in water that'll swim around. And you listen. Ain't no swimming around out there if things go left in Florida. Y'all gotta relax. Please. If they giving y'all warnings, get out. Take it from North Carolina. Go out there, type in North Carolina and Hurricane Helene and just see what's going on. right? See what's going on. And then you guys can measure. You don't really have a whole lot of time to really think about it, but yo, pay attention because listen, word. It's not a game out here, man. When people want to do certain things, they're gonna do it. And I just want all of y'all to understand. Now, this is the difference between when I say, yo, they got us separated by the dumbest shit out here in this country, right? Race, religion, and politics is the three things that they use to separate us. Now, look at when it happens to shit like this happen. Look how everybody need each other, man. Because everybody live over there in that part of North Carolina, not just one group or one race of people. They all do. You think they all ain't got to help each other right now? You got to put all that corny shit aside, man. You couldn't help how you was born, man. And if any of y'all do got the blueprint of how you can pick who you was going to be before you come down here, and put the word out so we can all figure it out. Right? But until then, nobody get to choose that. So the fact that you don't like a person based on what you see, that's corny. That shit gotta be over with. Do you know the people that y'all feel like is who you siding on don't give a damn about you? If you don't believe me, take North Carolina for example, man, and get yourself together, yo. Pay attention. Right? Pay attention, y'all. Right, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart, because tonight's show, like I said, hold on, I got a few comments, but I'm gonna get into this because tonight's show gonna be very interesting, because we talking about when it come down to people in authority and what's expected of them, right? These oaths they take, these pledges that they make, and what these things are supposed to do and how they supposed to uphold. And you know, it's a sad thing when you as a taxpaying citizen have to go through everything but the right thing in order for you to get justice when things are done to you wrong, especially from people that be in these civil positions. Now, look, when I tell y'all that it's been a lot of discussions up here, especially on my platform, with people who have, you know, run-ins with the law. Exactly. And there's been very few people that have ever worked in law enforcement that would want to come on certain podcasts or platforms at all and want to give their conversation at all. Because from our point of view, when it comes down to that, yo, it always seems like they all stick together. They got an oath. They don't, you know, they don't do that whole, yo, this ain't right. They go with the flow because they all be a part of the flow. It's very seldom that you get somebody out here that really is like, yo, I was in the flow, but that ain't it. And then this is what happened. And then the story, the dynamic story of what takes place is what tonight is going to be interesting when it comes down to it. And I'm not going to give too many details because I'm going to let them introduce themselves, because I also got to, you know, another person like, yo, and then for her, all the work that she has done for inmates, right, that has been done wrong. Now, what I always like to say, listen, we want to fight for civil rights for everybody in a position that they supposed to be in that's upheld by the law, right? I just hate that for my people, my brothers and sisters that look like me. You know what I'm saying? I'm not going to put that color on this because we more than a color, right? But the ones that look like us, we keep putting ourselves in a position where we wind up in this system. Now, I want to fight for you to have the rights that you deserve while you're in this system, but I want to hopefully, wholeheartedly, man, I want to fight to keep y'all out of it. You know what I mean? Because this is what we're going to talk about tonight. We're going to talk about it from a couple of different angles. And then when I tell y'all all that race baiting and all that separating us by the way things are set up here in America is corny, because the one person that you think ain't going to fight for you is the one person that will. You understand what I'm saying? Every time you think about help and where it's coming from, it always don't come from who you feel like it's going to come from. And remember, a lot of harm that come to you be coming to you from the people that look like you more than the people that don't. So stop playing with me, y'all. So I'm about to bring my guest up. But before I do that, let me get to these comments, because I got some comments on earlier. Let's see what's going on here. I can't speak for NC, but as someone who lives and works in the nonprofit sector in Atlanta, used to live in South Florida, we are gathering and sending supplies and people to help, which is dope. which is cool because that's the thing. It's just that FEMA themselves is on the ground in North Carolina. They got helicopters blocking roads, but not helicopters going into the areas where the roads are washed off and all that, like in the mountain areas and all that other stuff, to help get those people in and out of there or get them supplies. That's what they're not doing. They got fleets of trucks in certain cities and towns in that area close by. That's not helping. They got everyday people, right? Like you saying, y'all a nonprofit organization, and that's dope. Y'all got humanitarians. You got people who are actually human. But there's something to say about the fact that migrants can come over here and get funding, and Ukraine can get funding, and Israel and all this other stuff can get funding. But then now FEMA, they talking about they broke, so they can't help. Like, yo, man, all right, yo, it's so loud, yo. I don't know. And then here we got another one from Megan. She said, I believe they did the cloud modification for Hurricane Helene and Hurricane Milton. And like it's not hard for us to really kind of put two and two together, especially when it comes down to this. Now, we know that this is normally hurricane season. All right. Right? For the way that they could predict this every year, this particular time of the year, that is hurricane season, I guess, you know what I mean? But the fact that where the hurricanes are directly hitting now, it just, I don't know. But I just want to tell y'all, if y'all doing critical thinking, y'all know. So before I get into all that, let me bring my guest on, all right? Because this is going to be a doozy. All right, because we want to make sure that we get this information out here. So let me see. I got Meg in the building. What's going on, Meg? How you doing?
Good evening, good evening. I'm good. How are you? Thank you for having me tonight.
Yeah, definitely. All right. And then we got my man Victor Hill in the building. What's going on, bro?
Hey, how's it going? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you good. We can't see you. I don't know if you don't want to be seen, but
No,
we
I
can't
can
really.
be seen. Hold on, let me see what we can do here.
Yeah. Get your camera together so the people can see who you are or whatever. But to my audience tonight, listen, that's why I was telling y'all, man, this is gonna be a great learning opportunity, right? Because you look, like I said, it's not very often that we get the opportunity to speak to people from these particular, from this part of the fight, right? So, Meg, but while Victor is getting his camera together, let's talk a little bit, yo. Can you introduce yourself to the audience and tell everybody why you're on the platform this evening?
Yes, of course. So, me and Raw have been contemplating doing this for a while now, and I'm super shy. I hate like being on camera, to be honest with you. I do everything behind the scenes, but it was a great opportunity that Victor called me today and was like, "Hey, let's do a podcast." And he happens to have a brand new book out and has been quite controversial in, Clayton County, Georgia, which is where my passion has been since the death of Eric Holmes, a 19-year-old that was shot and killed at work by a police officer. And Victor has went through his own gates, and situations and turmoils with Clayton County. So it's just a great, thing that God's put together, and let's talk about it. Let's out this corruption.
That's what's up. That's what's up. So, Rick, while you getting the camera together, we can hear you really good. So go ahead and introduce to yourself to the audience and let everybody know why you're on the platform this evening.
All right. First of all, I want to apologize. I'm probably not the most technical savvy person. My expertise was cops and robbers. I definitely wanted to be on and want you to see me. I was going to show you a copy of the book, but I'm the former sheriff of Clayton County, Georgia. I was sheriff there for nearly 15 years. I just wrote a book called Vigilante Sheriff, The Truth About Corrupt Prosecutors Weaponizing the Legal System. I have an interest in history with the local prosecutor in our particular area. About 15 years ago, I was indicted on RICO charges, 27 count RICO charge. And that was when I was running for re-election. And it was to stop me from running. And of course, I beat all of the charges and I've been sheriff ever since. And then the same office came back with the same people who was attached to a federal task force and came up with another indictment 15 years later. And based on using certain things in the legal system, relationships and things like that, were successful in actually getting me prosecuted with a charge that's never been charged in the history of the United States before. I don't know if you're familiar with the 242 color of law that's often used to charge officers with. Matter of fact, George Floyd, the officer that killed George Floyd, was charged with that. Okay, but let me tell you something unique about that. The law is clear. When you charge someone with that, there has to be clearly established that what they did was against the law. My situation was very unique. No one was killed. No one was injured. It was some violent inmates that were restrained for safety. And they said simply by me authorizing them to be restrained that I violated that particular code. What's interesting is that particular code has a felony and a misdemeanor charge. So if a serious bodily injury or death is a felony, well, none of these guys were injured. And even a judge admitted no one was injured, hit, tased, or whatever. But they upgraded it to a felony because of one word. They said, hey, did you guys feel any pain? And was able to get 6 felony convictions. Let me add to this, that safety restraint chair has been used at my jail 630 times. I'm on record authorizing it being used 10 times. It was used 620 times by various members of the sheriff's office. They never looked at those times, which was the same reason and same circumstances. And so we know it had nothing to do with a restraint chair. So the book is about what it's really about. It was really about a political election that I was in the middle of. It was about a person that I had arrested and fired that was running, that was friends with the DA. And they used that particular thing to try and get me out in order to get him in. One other thing I want to add to it, in addition to that, never have we had any complaints about a safety restraint chair, not any lawsuits, no complaints whatsoever. And everyone that claimed that was a victim, they were contacted and asked, were you in a restraint chair? Was it he that put you in a restraint chair? Did you feel pain? So none of these people came forth and said they were victims. So I think it's an interesting conversation because I'm a person that was in the system, and I can talk firsthand how that system can be used for political purposes, other purposes, other than what it's actually intended for.
Right. Which is what we always say out here in the civilian land, right? Like that's what we always have to face each and every day, especially when certain skin types, right? It's almost like inevitable for us to understand that, but really rarely, besides yourself right now, by you being a former sheriff, right, being really in law enforcement and come out and be able to say, like, listen, y'all, yeah, they do weaponize the legal justice system, and they use it on the people that are civilians, and they'll use it on you if you're in law enforcement, if they feel a need to not, to do whatever they need to do to you. So I appreciate you, bro. I wish we could, your camera was on so people could actually see who you are, because I think your story is really important, coming from the fact that there's so many brothers that are incarcerated right now due to the fact that corruption has been used in order to put them in there. I'm not saying everybody in there is not innocent, but we know there's a good group of people in there that, that things have been used against them in order for them to be in there. So let's talk a little bit about the your story a little bit, because Clayton County is really famous. I mean, for so many different things in dealing with injustice.
Right.
Right. I'm not even going to hold you, yo. Like, I'm sure during the time you were in your position as well as right now. How did you deal with that particular image of what Clayton County is basically known for when it comes down to corruption?
Well, let me tell you this. I was a cop in Clayton County before I got elected sheriff. I was with the county police 17 years. So I police in that county for over 30 years. And here's the one thing that really bothered me. And this is not an indictment on all people in law enforcement, but there's a certain breed of law enforcement that unfortunately uses the system in a way that's very, very incorrect. And that's something that I tried to correct what I could, even from the position I was in. For example, I was in robbery homicide for over a decade. And I'll never forget, one time we had a robbery at a barbecue place. And we had a lady said that she knew who did the robbery. And she said it was a guy that used to work there. And we put a lineup together. She picked him out. And she said, that's him. So we got a warrant for him and went go looking for him. And we actually spotted him and he took off running. And we didn't catch him. Well, the next day he shows up in my office and he walks in and he says, hey, I'm here to turn myself in because I want to clear my name. And I asked him, let me add something else to this now. When we searched his apartment and his house, we actually found a money bag in the trunk of his car. So that was proof right there. Okay. So he sits down and he talks to me and he said, listen, I didn't do the robbery. And I said, who did? He says, my brother. And he said, look, pull a picture of him. He looks exactly like me. So I pull a picture and sure enough, they look like they could be twins, but they're not. And he says, if you call my brother right now, he'll tell you he did the robbery. We called him. He said, listen, I did the robbery. You can let him go or whatever like that. But he wasn't about to turn himself in. Well, we had a strange situation, but we put him in jail and we started looking for the other guy. So I called the DA and I said, listen, we got an interesting situation here. We got the wrong guy and he was willing to work with me, but this really wasn't my case. Well, what was interesting was when I told the detective what was going on, because I was assistant in that case. It wasn't my case, but I was assistant. I said, hey, we got the wrong guy. And he told me basically, well, we don't need to worry about it. And I said, well, we got the wrong man in jail. And he was like, hey, he probably did something else anyway. Well, that's the type of attitude that's very, very dangerous. My teacher who taught me how to be a detective, he taught me something very important. He said, if you're a good cop, you got to work just as hard to get an innocent man out of jail as you work to put a guilty man in jail. Right. So if a man is guilty, fine. But if a person is not guilty, just to indiscriminately say, hey, we don't care, leave him in there, he probably did something anyway. And that's the type of stuff that has to be rooted out. Now, when I was in charge of the sheriff's office, it was easy to root it out with people that work out from under me. But of course, you can see that even I became a victim of that type of thinking from other offices, like the DA's office or whatever like that. There's a lot of cases out there with people who shouldn't be charged. Now, let me add one more so I don't take up all the time. When I was sheriff, one day, one of my men pulled up and he had a guy in the back of the car and he said, hey, Sheriff, hey, how you doing? So what you got? He said, well, I got him for stealing a car, but I don't think he stole the car. I said, why? What do you mean you don't think he stole the car? He said, well, he actually bought the car from somebody and they changed the VIN number. And he has proof of it. And he said he's going to show us where this is at and everything. So I was like, well, if that's the case, why are you arresting him? And it was a moment of pause. He said, well, until he can prove, okay, if you don't think he stole the car and the man said he bought it from a particular person, he's a victim. So why are we going to run him through the system? I said, go ahead and let him go and work the investigation. Don't do that. Those are the type of things that we've got to fix in the criminal justice system. Now, here's another thing now that I'm on a roll. Probably the biggest thing that's going on in the criminal justice system is the grand jury system. Now, this book that I wrote when I was falsely in prison. It was inmates that helped me write this book. And most of them never said that they weren't guilty. They didn't say that. What they were complaining about was the amount of time they were being given or how they were being prosecuted. Or maybe some of the charges were correct, but they didn't know what some of these other charges that went through. Well, in a grand jury system, anybody can be indicted. You can indict a ham sandwich, and that's the truth. Think about it. You can't be in there. You can't have your attorney in there. So the
Right.
prosecutors can tell the grand jury members whatever they want to tell them. There's no checks and balance to see if they're lying or not, which some of them do. We're not going to say all, but some of them do. We know this
And
because
you
we saw
really,
it.
and the records, just to add, Victor, and the records, Raw, to obtain these grand jury transcripts are next to impossible to get. And the district attorneys of the counties, whether it be Clayton County, Fulton County, wherever, they're going in and they're only telling certain things to the grand jury on certain individuals. That's like how they're abusing their power to where they can like slime and snake their way through the system, which is crazy to me. That's why officers, even with Eric Holmes's case, 7 indictments, but he walked away with no charge. Like, it's crazy to me.
So my understanding is the only 2 countries left with grand juries is America and Liberia. And I think one thing that's going to happen is grand juries probably aren't even really necessary at all. There's some states that my understanding have already done away with them. But if we're going to have grand juries, I think defendants should have the right to have their attorneys there, and they should have the right to present a defense. I think most of the charges you see on people would never happen if it wasn't for that type of system. Think about it. The first time I was indicted for stealing my police car 5 times, the same car. I was indicted for a car that I would have had stolen 3 times in 2 weeks. This happened for real. It was on record. The grand jury is not being told a whole story, and they're just being fed something, so they go with a true bill. So think about it. You got 12 people who aren't trained. They're being fed Chick-fil-A and lemonade or whatever, and a DA can pretty much convince them to indict who they want to. And the same thing a DA can do is go in there and convince them not to indict someone.
Right.
Exactly.
Think about ultimate power in the county.
Right. Think about the situation where I was indicted the last time and they actually got a conviction. There's no way that I would have been indicted if our defense had been in there. The policy and training would have been presented. Hey, the policy says that this can happen. This was followed. The training says this can happen. They actually told a grand jury that one guy was struck when that never happened, and they couldn't produce who struck the person. They can say anything in there. You're not there to defend yourself. So now you get all of these indictments, and then the average person, when they're indicted, if they don't have the wealth or whatever, they feel like they're in a checkmate situation. So what do? It's a plea gun held to their head. Right. So then they take a plea.
Right.
And in my situation, not only was I indicted, but I was indicted on a case that by law should have never even went to a jury. Because according to the Supreme Court, you can't charge a person unless it's clearly established that what they did was a crime. So now we've got to take that to the same Supreme Court that has already ruled you can't do that. So if that happened to me, imagine what's happening to people every day.
Right.
Can I give you one more example before you take the floor?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay. Let me give you another example. In our county, we have a coach or 2 coaches, I believe, that have been indicted for murder. Now, once you think about this, we had a young lady, very sad situation. She was running track. She collapsed and she died. Okay. I'm sure that this weighs heavy on those coaches' heart. At best, if you want to be technical, they would be guilty of involuntary manslaughter at best, because involuntary manslaughter means that your negligence caused the death of a person. And even that might be a stretch. Now, am I saying that they used the best judgment if it was that hot? Probably not. But was it their intent to kill this child? Remember, when murder means that you actually planned the murder of a person. It's malice of forethought. So that these 2 coaches sit there and say, hey, make her run one more time. Maybe she'll die. I'm sure that wasn't the case. I'm sure they were just as shocked.
Right.
They're probably grieving. I can't say they're grieving as much as the parents, but I'm sure they're grieving that happened on them, because I'm sure they care about children. Well, when you indict people for murder, when that's not even a proper charge, is very disingenuous, because you're indicting them on something that the law doesn't even cover. That law doesn't even cover what they did.
Right.
And the whole objective is, okay, let's throw as many charges on people as we can, and that way,
stacking charges.
or perhaps if they don't plead to it, maybe one of the lesser charges will stick. Well, I think you should charge people for what they actually did. And if you want to bargain with them to go down from there, that's fine. But that's like a store marking the price up higher than they really want it to be, and then sell it to you for the price they want to sell it to you, as if they're selling it to you at a discount. But now you're dealing with people's lives and their freedom, and you're doing the same thing.
Right.
Right. And
okay,
I think
so I don't want to stop the floor. Y'all go ahead.
No, because I mean, y'all are the guests and y'all here to talk. I mean, we here to have a conversation. I'm not here to interview, and I think that's the main, well, not I think, this is the main purpose of my platform, is to have conversations, because coming with questions and stuff like that, it has to be based on the conversation we have and not forethought. So what I'm thinking though is, based on the things that you're saying, is the reason why, in our communities, that we have the certain type of relationship that we have with the police, right? When it comes down to, because whether it's the sheriff, whether it's a city cop, whether it's a, state trooper, it don't really matter. It's really like all the same to when it comes down to how we're treated when it comes to, in law enforcement. So you guys are still, and the thing about Clayton County, I mean, it's so many other counties that's just like Clayton County. It's just that they all don't have a Victor Hill, right? Or maybe they do, right? Or Meg Keller, right? Maybe they do. It's just that these people are not out in the forefront about it, because they be worried about the things that they're telling, because it's real inside stuff that people could really actually hopefully use to help get some of this these people out of the situation that they're in. Are you guys, so do you deal with any of that now that you're on this side of things, based on the books and stuff like that? Are they threatening you? Are you still in the area? How's that thing going with y'all? I mean, well, not you, Meg. I know you're not in Fulton County, but or in Georgia, but so Vic, how is that going on with you?
Well, the book, of course, I'm in the area. The book is just released 2 weeks ago. A law firm is taking it to the Supreme Court. And, I hope that this book, let me tell you this. This book was actually the idea of the inmates that I was incarcerated with. First of all, let me give them credit, because it wasn't my idea to write this book. Matter of fact, the book is dedicated to them. So to answer your question, let me just read the dedication of this book so you can understand, and I can answer your question. It says, this book is dedicated to the inmates at the Forest City Federal Correction Institute, where I'm now a prisoner as I write. I thought this prison would become my monastery so I could engage in long hours of meditation. But to my surprise, this prison has become my university, and the inmates my professors. I never planned to write a book. This book was their idea, and their requirement is my dissertation to earn an honorary doctorate degree from their university. My professors contributed a lot to the content of what you're about to read and check daily on my progress. No formal education from an accredited university can match the honorary doctorate in criminal justice I received from them. I will be forever indebted to all of them for helping me achieve higher education. So now, when this book was written, it was written from two perspectives. It was written from a perspective of a cop and a top cop, because I was tough on crime, and I still believe I'm being tough on crime. And believe it or not, they believe I'm being tough on crime. And a lot of people don't understand that, but they do too. Because when they were out and when they get out, they don't want to live in a place that's unsafe either. So I wrote it from that perspective. Then I also wrote it from their perspective, because there's two sides to the story, and each side has valid points. And somewhere in the middle, there needs to be a balance of the yin yang. Everything's not all wrong on the law enforcement side, but it sure ain't all right, and vice versa. There are people that even though they're on the other side, they still have rights that have been violated. They're living in conditions that are not fit. You would think that a federal prison would be a very nice place to be, but you'd be surprised. I've seen county jails better. I know mine was better because we had the cleanest jail in Georgia. So the book is a dichotomy. The book tells the side from each side, from the side of the sheriff, and then also from the side of the inmates. And both of them have legit points. One chapter talks about a lot of the things that they wanted said, and I got to say, some of it I couldn't even argue with. One of them I think would surprise you. One thing that they talked about was convicted felons' rights to carry weapons. And this is what they said. And I really couldn't come back with an argument because I was real strict on taking guns out of the hand of so-called quote, quote, criminals. But their point was this. If I'm here for a financial crime, if I'm here for a crime and it wasn't violent, I didn't shoot anybody, I didn't use a gun to rob anybody, then why can't I have a weapon to protect my home? Why can't I have a weapon to go hunting? And I really didn't have an answer for that. And I was like, I never thought of it that way, but you actually got a good point there. So, of course, we know if a person is there for a violent crime and he shot several people or whatever, we don't want him to have a gun. But they're saying, okay, if we paid our debt to society, why is that not the case?
Right. There's levels to it.
Exactly. There are inmates here that have full-time jobs and they go to work every day and they work 8 hours or more. But one of the jobs that's considered high paying is 18 cents an hour.
Right.
What they said was this, and it makes sense. Why can't we get minimum wage? Okay. We tell people, okay, why can't they get out and get a job? Yet we restrict them from being anything. They can't get a license to be a doctor or attorney. And some of them actually would be great attorneys. I probably met some guys in there that's better than some of the lawyers I know.
Mm-hmm.
Right. We take all these opportunities from them. When they're in there, the ones who's willing to work can only make 18 or 20 cents an hour. But yet we're telling them, hey, why can't you work like everybody else? We're telling them, hey, come to church. The Lord's going to forgive you all your sins, but we never forgive them. And I think they've got very legit points. If there's a man willing to work 8 hours in prison to support his family back home, they're not asking for $100,000. They're just asking for minimum wage. So these are the type of things that go on that people really don't know. I got to see it firsthand. We don't have a system like that at the county jail that I ran where inmates are paid anything. But what we do is we give them time off their sentence if we put them on a work program. So they work a day to get a day. But to work a person for 18 cents an hour,
modern day slavery.
How do we justify that?
I mean, we can't justify it, but we could categorize it, because the one thing that a lot of people have in common when it comes down to what you were explaining was that the reason why is because of the skin color that we wear. And so many instances, we want to live in a world or in a society where that is no longer a factor. We want to believe that it's made to be where it doesn't hold that same weight, but it never really receives the value that it's supposed to have, right? And versus it being whether you get equal rights for certain things or not. Because what you guys are explaining is basic common sense. If they're in there working, why would you only give them 18 cents? Now, where's the justification for the 18 cents? Because when it comes down to the products that they're making and stuff that they're getting paid the 18 cents, what industries are those? Right. And then we get into the whole thing about that. And this is why I always talk about this when it comes down to the word work together, because unfortunately, this is affecting people that are poor. And I mean, yes, it's happening to the majority of those of us that look like me, but there's white guys in there that are suffering through the same thing as well. Latino guys are in there suffering through the same thing as well. how do you got okay? So man, let's talk to you for a second because based on what you do, because you're so instrumental in helping people in the back end when it comes down to certain paperwork, to things being filed, to calls being made on people's behalf when you get the information about things that are going on with inmates and stuff like that. Like,
Yeah.
what motivated you in the beginning to get in this line of work?
Well, I it was always something so much bigger than me. I didn't wake up one day and was like, I want to be a paralegal for civil rights. Like, it was never that. It was God put a calling on my heart that was so much bigger than me. And
Right.
whenever, like I started in 2020, whenever there, oh, I started in 2020, whenever the George Floyd stuff happened, and just started looking into police involved shootings and jail deaths, and there was never like a lot of answers given to them. And I got linked up with UCLA, the Coroner's Report Project, and then I actually got like autopsies, toxicology reports in my county, and was able to give that resource to the families like that hadn't ever like gotten the family's autopsy. And so I got into that, but then that's just so, like, mentally draining. The last case I took was Eric Holmes whenever he was killed by a police officer in Clayton County, November 22nd or 21st of 2022. And he was 19 years old, shot while at work. The officer had previous civil rights violations leading up to, there was over 3 of them. And he had, like, accidents with cop cars, like, it was absolutely crazy. And so that's what got me interested and zoned in on Clayton County, was because, when you hear a mama cry that she just lost her son, it changes you. And so
Yeah.
with the I started, doing that, and then I just started getting calls from people in Georgia that were incarcerated and going through hard times, and I can write petitions, and, like, I do, all the document part, like, the fun parts, like the press release, the petitions to dismiss, like, civil rights violations, right to speedy trials, like, all that good stuff. And I got
Right.
linked with an attorney, Mario Williams, with HDR Attorneys, and him and I have been going full force since July. Last week, thank the Lord, just I was well, because of Miss V as well, I was introduced to LA Pink with the Georgia Street Groomers, and she did an investigation into like Patrick LaButte of Fulton County and like his misallocation of funds, all of this good stuff, which led me to Mario Williams. And last week we beat a murder charge. There was a kid that was held in Fulton County Jail since 2019. And they charged him with murder. It was not murder. It was self-defense. The other person shot first. We did a petition for dismissal based on the failure of his speedy trial rights because, that was almost 6 years ago. And the judge actually, first time in Georgia, did a directed verdict prior to the closing arguments and dropped the murder
Wow.
charge. He's free. So it's crazy the work that can be done when you have the right people that has the mindset and the motivation to get stuff done. The things that are happening in Georgia with these inmates right now are super concerning as far as on the state level. The DOJ just released that article that, it's inhumane conditions. Boy, is that an understatement. When we're talking inhumane conditions, we're talking about these inmates have not gotten a shower in months. We're talking about they've had no family communication. We're talking about they've had no legal, like I was fighting today with the Georgia Department of Corrections because I just need a legal visit with a client of ours. Like we just need to talk to them on the phone, and they're playing games, like saying they're out of, the power isn't working, but we're hearing from other inmates and like their families that they're talking to them just fine. So it's just crazy, the abuse of power whenever it comes to the system, whether it be the district
Right.
attorney who, makes the charges, or whether it be the wardens in these state prisons they just don't care. And I'm sure some of them are good. It's just like police officers, like I do respect that. I don't think all police are bad. I think that it takes one bad apple to turn a whole force bad. I think it takes one bad DA to turn a whole county bad. Like in Georgia, definitely Tasha Mosley, which is the district attorney who convicted Mr. Hill, indicted Mr. Hill. This woman Now, granted, I'm going to say this woman in Clayton County is a district attorney. She was also the board chair of the Rainbow House, which was a child, like a youth, and like a youth shelter. This woman was the board chair. There was a sexual molestation and cover up where 3 people of this organization was charged. They were sentenced, went to jail. Why wasn't she charged as a board chair? Because she can't charge or indict herself. Let's talk about it. She can't indict herself.
Mm,
But what she can do is she can try to silence people that actually do have a good heart and do care about their community and want to keep their community safe. And she can try to silence them. That seems to me what she did to Victor Hill. And that is horrible.
yo, and you know it's so crazy because this is not the first time her name has been brought up on this platform. You know, I
Right.
had Miss Holmes on. We talked about this at an extent too, like when it comes down to, you know, and the whole situation that's going on with that whole scandal when it comes down to the child molestation situation, the cover up when it comes down to the people who were convicted, and
Right.
then, you know, just the way that her case was dropped when she was so close to getting certain answers and stuff by the
Right, and
same
she messaged
people
me.
who was
Tasha Mosley messaged me on Mother's Day. I was, like, on her page talking to her, and she
mm,
messaged me on Mother's Day whenever we told like, pretty much said we were about to out you, and then all of a sudden, she had Miss Holmes in, she played the video and tried to say all this extra bull crap. So, yeah, like, it's definitely I feel like with certain cases and there's Jabril Robinson that was shot by police there. There was,
right.
a lot she let go of a killer that went and killed a girl that was like a victim of domestic violence, like just by her office's quote unquote mistake. Like they definitely need to look into certain district attorneys in Georgia specifically.
And that's what we be trying to figure out, like who do you send to do those things. So another thing that you both of you guys said tonight, which was very interesting, which I talk about a lot on the platform, is how you figure out or find your purpose. Right? It's just like some people have to find their purpose due to circumstances that are not too favorable. But then the way that you guys are able to turn that into a positive and be able to motivate others and help others and give out information and not afraid to let people know what steps to take and how to go about certain things when they do have people that care. That's amazing because it shows that you both have empathy. Because I'm sure, like Mr. Hill, like I don't know, your reputation probably was, but between you being the sheriff and then going through what you went through and then actually going to jail, I'm sure your image and all these other things was smeared. I'm sure you would be looked at a certain way and all other kind of things. And then for you, Meg, it's a difference because I always talk about this too when it comes down to us as people, how we're so separated by skin color and race. And then the person that fights the hardest for people that look like me be looking like you.
Right.
And
Oh,
so
it's definitely
I hate that, right? That
right.
this is what we deal with on a day-to-day basis versus us actually coming together. Like right now, how you two guys have come together on, on between this, because let's face it, when I did the research on Mr. Hill, the way that they paint him, it's not really a flattering picture.
Right.
But to hear him speak and to the things that he's talking about, and we see why they're using that particular verbiage and language when it comes to him now.
Right.
Because when he was in office and he was in his position, and I'm not trying to speak for you, Mr. Hill, I'm just talking about the research that I've done. When it
Mm-hmm.
comes down to when you were in there, you were praised.
Mm-hmm.
And then it looks like in the situation when I guess you know how it go when things don't
They
go all the
painted the
way, or
narrative.
you
Right.
and then they change the narrative and the public just completely joined in on the change, right?
Right.
Almost as if to say, I knew something,
Because he was
right?
too
I knew
perfect. Right.
something.
They
Right.
ate it
I
up.
knew something. I knew it was something. I knew it was something
Right.
because that's how it go when it comes to us as people. Like when you're in a certain position, they're going to use that as a means of to say, you're guilty by a court of public opinion
Right.
because
And
your
they
reputation was very damaged.
and the other party never even gets a chance to speak for themselves. And I just have experience with this with like jail deaths and or police officer involved shootings, because victims, if you think about it from that perspective, they always had a gun, or they were running from the police, or there was something, outrageous. And in Victor's case, it's the same, the narrative before he even had a chance to, give his side. So yeah,
It's interesting. No, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Meg.
oh no, I was done. I was just saying that it was crazy that they did that to you, just like they do to other victims.
Well, there's a chapter in the book, to be exact. I think, that's chapter 8, and it's called "The Press, the Prosecutors, and the Robert Ford Syndrome." And it's a chapter I hope both of y'all get to read and all the listeners get to read. And it talks about the relationship between the press and the prosecutors. And I'll get into the Robert Ford Syndrome. But you got to understand, the press can indict a person before they're even allowed to go to court. And that's something we've got to look at, because you got to think, if so much information is put out, then by the time you get to court, you've got a jury pool that pretty much may already have an opinion based on what they see in the press. Now, I want you, my case is probably a great example of, first you got relationships, and then you have the press. You have the DA, who we found out was able to prove through a witness that's friends with the DA. Her husband used to work for the DA. The judge is Facebook friends with one of my political opponents. So first you got all of these incestuous relationships. And then during my trial, the judge actually addressed the press. The jury held out for 4 days. It should have been a mistrial. And that's part of what the appeal was about, that they were coerced to a guilty verdict because she wouldn't call a mistrial. But at one point, and it's in the book, she actually addressed the press in the audience. And she said, look, I know y'all want me to kick him off, but I don't have any reason. I don't have anything legally I can kick this guy off for. Now, who is the press that a federal court judge has to address and say, look, I understand what y'all want, but I can't do it for you right now? So you got to think, and that's where we get into this Robert Ford syndrome. You got to understand that most elected and appointed officials are controlled by the press. The press has untold perceived power over them. Why? Because they have a fear of not being portrayed nice on the news. They say that people are afraid of public speaking, but that's not really what they're afraid of. They're afraid of what will be said or thought about them after they speak publicly. So because the press knows this, they have perceived untold power over people who are appointed or elected. So instead of making a decision that's fair, they're trying to make a decision that they think will please the press, so they can get a favorable rating on the 6 o'clock news, as opposed to what's right. So that's a serious situation that we have there. So the chapter is called "The Press, the Prosecutors, and the Robert Ford Syndrome." People say, well, what's the Robert Ford Syndrome? Well, to understand that, you got to know who Robert Ford is, and most people don't. And that's what's so sad about it. Robert Ford is the man that shot and killed Jesse James. He shot him in the back because he knew he couldn't face him in a direct gunfight. Kind of like my situation. They knew they couldn't beat me at the polls in an election, so we got to find another way to get him out. But the reason I bring up Robert Ford is this. Robert Ford thought that by killing Jesse James, that he would gain the fame or accolades that Jesse James had. And if you look at a lot of prosecutors, they will target police officers, celebrities, in order to do that. Alec Baldwin is a good example of that. You see what I'm saying? Now, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
I'm not saying every celebrity shouldn't be prosecuted. If you're out there raping, robbing, and murdering, nobody's above the law. But you see these cases like mine where, he drove the police car out of town 5 times. So that's theft of a motor vehicle. Who's ever heard of that? It's my assigned vehicle. I'm on call 24/7. That's never been done before. But they had to come up with something. Okay, you got the restraint chair being used 630 times, but we're not concerned with the other 620, only the times you use it. If you really cared about the restraint chair and you thought it was being used wrong, why didn't you look into the other 620 times and contact those 620 people and told them, hey, you're victims? So when you use the criminal justice system to target certain people because you believe those people can get you a press conference, and if you can get a press conference, maybe you can get reelected or maybe you can get a higher position, that's a misuse of the system. So there's a strange Robert Ford syndrome that goes on with prosecutors, the press, judges. And so is a prosecution really about right or wrong? Or is it about, hey, well, this is a well-known person, so if we can indict him, maybe this will get us some points with the press or get us on the news. You know?
Gotcha. So
Exactly.
it goes back to what we were saying earlier. So it's a cycle, right? So it's a complete cycle. So the news, in order for them to get certain type of ratings, they need something that is really high profile. So they use certain situations along with law enforcement in order to get those stories in order for their ratings. So to me, I don't, and this is just me. I'm not saying it that I know for a fact. So, but maybe if y'all know, y'all can tell me. But to me, it doesn't seem like none of that happens without money being exchanged, right? Because people have to have a benefit out of it in order for it to happen. Because more ratings means more advertisers or whatever for the news or during the news time or whatever that happens in order for them to bring more revenue in. Like we all understand the fight for ratings is the fight for revenue, right? That's the only difference in that world, if that's what that means. So the fact that the money is being moved around all the way around like that against the people, and the main thing being used against the people is their emotions when it comes down to the news. They use the people's emotions against them in order for them to make money. But then they use the people in order to induce the emotion to make the money. Now that's crazy.
Let me
When
give
you
you a good
actually
example.
really put it down to that.
You know, you're right on point. Let me tell you a story. When I went to homicide, it was the same year of the O.J. Simpson murder trial. And I remember some of the old heads were teasing me. I hope you learn your trade, because they really tearing up these detectives. Make sure you know what you're doing and present the evidence right so no one can tear it up, right? And they were just kind of kidding me. But of course I was following it. I'm a young detective and I want to make sure that I learn everything about homicides that I can. Well, that same week, the guy that was training me, he said, hey, we got a murder trial that I got to testify in. It's one of my cases. So you need to come with me and sit and listen to my testimony or whatever. Well, what amazed me is that when I walked in there, the only people in there was a judge, the prosecutor, the murder suspect, his defense attorney, and the detective and I. There was no media. Unfortunately, why, I don't know. No one from the victim's family was there, and I don't know why. But there was no interest. And I remember thinking that every day I was watching the trial of O.J. Simpson. And here's another person that was murdered. Here's a murder trial going on, but no media, no crowd, nothing. And that's the first time I think I really got an idea of, okay, is it more important when a crime is committed by a celebrity or not committed by a celebrity? What about all these other murder trials? And you'd be surprised how many murder trials I saw over the years that there were more people than that. But you would think that would garner attention because you're dealing with somebody's life. So again, It's kind of like what you said. Okay, if they covered that particular murder trial, there wouldn't be any ratings because no one heard of the victim. But in this case, the victims were famous, the perpetrator was famous, and so you got everyone watching that particular channel, and that's a shame. I can think of murders that I've seen detectives work 2 or 3 days and that was it. And then I remember all of us getting called in one day just to go look for some teenagers, which is nothing wrong with that. That's what we were supposed to do. But that never happened before. And then it turned out that the teenagers were friends of somebody were children of somebody that was close to the mayor of the county. So, it was a lot of manpower called in on that. But we find a dead cab driver and we work it. Well, it's the weekend. We coming back in Monday morning. That goes on. And that was probably one of my motivation to run for sheriff, because when the weekend came and I asked my guys, okay, where were we at on this murder? Well, we did this, and Monday we're going to do this. What do you mean Monday we're going to do this? We're going to give a murderer days off? Exactly. I guess you coming in tomorrow. If that was your family member murdered, you wouldn't want to know that the people looking for him was taking the weekend off. So we're not going to take the weekend off.
Yeah, that's crazy. And this it's happening in every major city.
Yes.
It's happening all over. That same cycle, that same movement of certain money for certain stories for certain people. And then there's a way that we think about when it comes down to the prison or the justice system in itself, about what you were saying earlier, when it comes down to even when you have the wrong person, don't worry about it, just leave him in there because he probably done something. It's like this thing of saying, yo, look at him. He probably done something just by the way that he looked, because they wouldn't do certain people like that, just by saying, just going to throw him in there and just keep him in, even when we know they got the wrong person. And I am like, right now, it gives you this eerie feeling whenever it comes down to it, because we know everybody that is in these situations are not innocent. We know that. We know that they may not be being treated fairly in the situation that they're in. We know that too. But we also know that there's a lot of people who are in places that in situations that they didn't do. Look at you for an example. You're a great example of that, of somebody that was on the side of law, who they use your car against you. But you're on call 24 hours a day. So the fact that wherever you are, if you got to get there, you should be able to be in your car to be able to get there, right? So, like, I don't understand that, but that ain't my business. But what I would say is that when it comes down to just being able to use whatever they want in order to push a certain narrative, if that don't wake the people up to what is going on now, because everything that you're saying based on the political situation is the same thing that's going on in the higher scale. It sounds just like it. It's happening on all levels, right? We don't know. Like we could say we don't know. You say that again?
Yeah, and there's only one way to change it, and
is to work together.
Yeah, we got to work together, and what we got to work to do, right? Everything rises and falls on leadership. Everything. I don't have to meet the mayor to know who he is. All I got to do is ride through the city. If I see a lot of trash, I see a lot of graffiti, I see a lot of thugs hanging out in front of the store, I know who the mayor is, I know who the police chief is, I know who the sheriff is. Everything is leadership. I don't have to meet the warden. I can walk through a jail and tell who the warden is. And these organizations that we're talking about, government organizations, only run as well as whoever the leader is. Whatever the leader is, the organization is. If the leader is paranoid, the organization is paranoid. If the leader is honest, the organization is going to be honest. If the leader is strong, the organization is going to be strong. If he's weak, the organization is going to be weak. So the fish rots from the head down. So unless there's a person in charge that's going to say, okay, we're not going to put unnecessary charges on people. We're not going to use the system to weaponize. We're going to actually work. Because, one thing with government workers, you get paid the same whether you perform or not. So if there's nobody there to hold them accountable to say, hey, we're going to work 8 hours a day for 8 hours pay, we're going to actually go out and patrol and not sit at the Waffle House. If that type of strength doesn't come from the top down, nothing gets done. So we have to find people to replace those leaders. Now, is that easy? No, it's not. But that's the key to the problem. And let me tell you how. The Navy SEALs, they did an experiment at Buzz Training. Every time they have these raft boat races, there's always a boat that loses, there's always a boat that wins. Every time they took the leader from the boat that was winning and put it over the boat that was losing, guess what? That boat starts winning. Right. So until we got to put the right people. Now, where they are and how do we find them and how do we run them? Okay, I don't know everything, but one thing I do know is this. Everything is a result of leadership. Everything we're talking about now is a leadership problem. No matter what you see, it's a leadership problem.
You know,
if
and
you see somebody walking
right.
down the street, inappropriate, it's a leadership problem. It's a leadership of the parents or wherever they at, because they don't have strong leadership to say, hey, you're going to walk down the street and look like you got some sense. Everything rises and falls on leadership.
Yeah, you're right. Well, but you know, this is the thing. It looks like that's going on more. It's like, even if the leaders are good or started off good, it's hard for them to maintain that whenever they're not getting paid a certain thing, because it seems like the corruption is what turns everybody that starts off a certain way into someone different. Because even what happened to you, that was technically under the definition of corruption, of the way that they was able to use that against you, right? So corruption is what is really the infiltrator or the spirit that's running through all of these places, because people are able to get certain things done by the power of the dollar. The money is moving around because, like you said, no matter how much work they do, they're getting paid the same thing. And at some point, it's just like any other job. You know how it go. People will not go above and beyond, because if they don't see that there is something that's at the end, because they're doing it to be recognized. There's so many people going above and beyond that don't get recognized. Now, when it comes down to leadership, it's also that the people that are in leadership, is my firm belief, the way that you lead is the way that you are in real life. So if you're not a person that appreciates the people around you in real life, you're not going to appreciate the people around you in no situation. So we got to kind of find a way to make sure that these people are paid adequately, so they won't be able to take, or they're not taking the corruption or the backdoor dollar in order for certain things to just happen the way that they're happening. Because I'm a firm believer, and I think everybody that's in our position understand that this stuff is going on because people are getting paid for it to happen this way. Ratings, regardless, ratings is about rate. It's the same thing. That's the root of the word. Ratings. It's the root of the word. So people are trying to do things for a rate. There's nobody not doing nothing for that particular thing. It's the corruption. It's the amount, the fact that you guys have to risk your lives. And I know you took it a certain way, and that's great. That I'm glad that you came on. I don't know how often you've been able to tell your story. So I'm thankful that you came on the platform and even decided to talk from your perspective. The fact of the matter is, though, it's more people like you in all these other places that will not get on here and talk. Another thing that you said that should change is that whenever you guys get into these positions, hopefully your lawyers are turned into learning how to come to these type of platforms in order to get your news out too, so people can understand. Because there shouldn't be grand juries being picked without, defense and people there to actually see what the grand jury is being fed in order for them to have a proper defense. That's don't even sound constitutional, but the fact that that's able to be done is weird too. Right? So it's just a whole lot of things that's going on in the background, and it all seems to come down to corruption. Whether the people are good when they started or not, we got to find a way to make sure that people, or it's got to be something in a way where you guys can get paid the right, well, whatever you feel like the amount would be worth for you to do the job that you're doing, so people will be less likely to be open to take the corruption. Because you guys, not you, obviously, because you was on the opposite end. But yeah, I mean, let's be face it, man. They're getting paid. Private prisons are getting funneled. The record labels are owning the private prisons. These things are all a part of it. The news is a part of the same cycle. So I'm just saying, everything that's being done is being done based on a dollar.
You're absolutely right, and you're very perceptive. One thing you got to understand about prisons, uh, when you see prisons that have drugs and cell phones and stuff like that, it doesn't float in there. So that means there's employees bringing them in there. Now, let me say this. My jail was free of cell phones. It was free of drugs when I was sheriff. And it was very, very simple how we did it. It wasn't rocket science. Basically, I sealed off all the entrances for employees, and they could only go through one entrance. And everyone that went in jail, including me, had to be searched. If you went outside for 5 minutes and smoked, when you came back, you were searched. There was a camera recording the searches so that we could review it to make sure they were being searched. And I had access to the camera where I could look at it at any time. So it wasn't rocket science. I actually had an inmate that thanked me and said, "Hey, you the man that got me off drugs." And I was like, "How did I get you off drugs?" He said, "This was the only jail I've ever been in when I didn't have access to drugs. So I ended up coming off drugs cold turkey and never went back on it." Well, that same jail now is infested with drugs and cell phones. So again, there has to be strong leadership to say, okay, that's not coming in, and we're going to do what it takes to make sure it doesn't come in. And it's going to take a lot of discipline, a lot of firing, because you have to. You just can't have people working there doing this. Now, at the same time, I do sympathize. It's not a profession that pays well, and that needs to change. And that was something I always advocated for. I've always said we send people out to risk their lives, and we pay them, not just on the police force, in the military. We pay them $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 a year. But we pay people millions of dollars to take a ball and put it into a basket or whatever. But at the same time, if it's not your money, it's not your money. I could work at a place that makes hundreds of thousands of dollars, but that doesn't give me a right to reach in the cash register. So it has to be kept under control. It has to be the right people to keep it under control, the right people who understand that they can't do it. But at the same time, I do believe that you got men and women putting their lives on the line. And what we pay people to risk life and limb is very, very shocking, because they could lose their lives or they could be injured permanently. And that's not just the police force, that's the military. When you look at what we pay them, and they could be blown to smithereens.
Right.
Yeah, you're right, and that's why the main thing about all of this is, we all got to kind of look at things from that perspective. If guys are not getting paid, it just seemed like this. A lot of people know what police officers make when they get into the job. They just understand that they can make more. Now, and that is why I feel like the corruption thing is so easy for them to get into, because that is a place where they could get more because of the side that they're on. And that's the saddest part about it. Because in most situations, people don't go through certain type of psych evaluations. They don't go through, certain type of background checks with just understanding how you used to be before they got into law enforcement. Because there are a lot of people who were in law enforcement who got out of law enforcement, who got into other things. And I had a parent on here who used to be in law enforcement, who carried that on to, doing things to kids in school, where he drug her daughter down the street for like 3 blocks with her arm caught in the door of a school bus because she was asleep whenever she got to a stop. And because he was ready to go where he needed to go, she tried to get off at the wrong stop. It was the wrong stop. And he just said, "I'm going to keep dragging anyway," and drug her down the street with her arm in the bus, right? And this is a guy who used to be in law enforcement. So what I'm saying to you is that in so many instances, it makes sense what you're saying. The saddest part is that if it wasn't for the cell phones getting into prisons, I can't speak for the drugs, but for the cell phones, if it wasn't for the cell phones getting into prison, we wouldn't know about a lot of these conditions that they're facing, that we have to sit out here and make these petitions and fight for right now. If it wasn't for the cell phones, because you said you had one of the cleanest jails in the deal, but that's not the case for all the places that people are incarcerated at. So without these cell phones, we wouldn't have known what was going on. So it's a catch-22.
Right.
Right? We
It,
got to
it,
figure out a way where we could get, not to cut you off, but we got to find a way where we can have a balance though. Like we could do the thing for the drugs if that's what y'all guys are feeling and you are helping people detoxify themselves. But we need these cell phones in here some type of way, bro, because the way that this information will not get out if it wasn't. So when even though the people that work for these prisons are feeling like they're getting a little extra hustle and they doing certain things, they're working through their purpose too, right? Because of them allowing those cell phones to get in is how we know about these conditions of these
no, I can't
prisons and
argue
how
with you with that.
terrible they are.
Let me tell you the travesty with the cell phones. Um, the travesty is not the cell phone. It's not because these folks want to talk to their families. They want to see things on the phone or whatever like that. That's understandable. I mean, unless you're using that cell phone to bring in drugs or something like that, I feel you. But let me tell you what the travesty is about it. A cell phone at Walmart that you could buy for 50 or 70 bucks goes for $2,000 or more at a jail.
Right.
So that means
Right.
somebody's grandmother, mother, or
These
whoever,
families are paying for it, right?
right, so that their loved ones can have a phone. Okay, I do believe that we're probably going to have to look at something in the future to give inmates more communication, more access, limited. I mean, we don't need to be giving them access to craziness on the internet, but I mean, I'm not opposed to that, but I don't know what people realize what the real travesty is when they're paying this extravagant amount to guards for a cell phone. So even though it's something they want and it's something that they were able to get information out on, they're actually being victimized by the people who are selling it to them. And so there are guards making more money selling cell phones than they are bringing drugs to the prison. Just think about it.
But then
If you can,
that goes
yeah, yeah.
that goes back to what we were saying earlier about the amount that people are getting paid. So
Mm-hmm.
when people and paid, they find a way to do it. These are professions that people know when they go in that they're not going to get paid. But that goes back to the whole thing about corruption, right? And also goes back to the thing about purpose. There's a person or a guard who is, taking $2,000 to $3,000 for a cell phone for somebody that they know they shouldn't be doing that to. But then the information that's getting out is priceless, right? Because without that information, so like I said, they feel like they're doing something to help benefit them, but in turn, they're still finding their way to help get the message out. And in this particular situation, I think a lot of us talk about when it comes to the spiritual aspect of things. Right, it's easy for us to look at things from the more physical space, right? But there's a spiritual balance to all these things. You just can't do things to God's anointed and not feel like things are not going to happen or it's not going to be a position where it's the rest of the people that got to do the fighting for the people that are in a position where who can't fight. And that's where you guys come in at. But for the most part, whether it's 2,000, 5,000, whether grandma doing it, whether uncle is doing it, whether people are taking out loans or whatever they're doing to make sure that they can communicate with their loved ones so they can understand what's going on. Now, I'm not saying that it's right. I'm saying that it should be a means of us understanding why, right? To the point where if we're not going to give them free phone calls or whatever they could do to make sure they could stay in contact with their loved ones, because Meg, you said the biggest nail today is that modern day slavery is a real thing. So these inmates
Right.
are being treated just like that on a day-to-day basis.
Right.
So we cannot allow that to continue to happen for a place that's supposed to be made to rehabilitate people, right? Rehabilitation doesn't say I can't talk to my family. Now, if
I,
you saying to people, listen, that should be in the law. Like this should be in the law. Like, listen, if you do a crime and you get locked up, it's part of the law that you will not be able to talk to your family for this amount of time. You know, put it in there, right?
Right. Let
But
them know.
then
Let them
let
talk
them
to their
know up front.
representation.
But don't violate a person's right and then feel like they're not going to figure out a way to get around it. This is
Right.
corruption.
Right.
So if we
I
want
can't
to
disagree
stop
with that.
corruption, we want to stop corruption, then we got to find a way to find out what's the main common denominator in the corruption, and it's the money. So we got to pay the guards. We got to pay, like if we want them to get, if we don't want them to take the people of the money, or we got to pay them. So what we got to do, that mean that the people that's wardens, we got to hold them accountable. If their prisons are filthy, then why are they getting the funding? Where the money going?
I
Right?
agree with
So
you. I want to ask you a question. I agree with you. Everything you're saying is on point. So when I ask this question, it's just to stimulate conversation.
Gotcha.
Okay. So what do we pay the guards so they don't steal? And I'm going somewhere with this, but I just want to get your perspective. What do you think would be a fair salary that would stop guards from bringing phones and drugs to the jail? And I say that while I agree there should be better community. Inmates should have more access to communicate with their families. I mean, as long as they're not communicating something illegal, they should be able to talk to their families. I agree with that 100%. But what salary do you think we could put guards and police officers where they would stop being corrupt?
Well, see, that would be the greatest form of communication that leadership in that space can have with the people who do the job. Being that I don't do the job and know the details that involves to come up with a number, I probably wouldn't be the best person to ask for that. But what I can say is that I went to Puerto Rico one time in a trip, and I'm just going to correlate this, right? The time that I did go, when I went through Old San Juan, they were actually having a protest. The police were protesting against the state because they were out here doing these jobs, but they don't get health insurance. Like a
Right.
part of their benefits is not health insurance. So they were out there going through a strike where the police came together on all aspects to strike against the state for understanding how they're risking their lives and not even offer health insurance. A lot of people get hurt on the jobs, not just dealing with those, but dealing with motor vehicles and all these other things, right? So they deal with that. So when it comes down to it, how can we not put those in a position where, they don't protest? So everywhere we go, the police are the people that are in these positions are speaking out saying, yo, we need this. It's just that the people in leadership are not listening to them. That's where the conversation need to go. It need to go to the people who doing the job and ask them, guys, what would it take? And being honest with them. Like, look, I'm not going to point no fingers out here, but I know that a lot of y'all got a hustle going on. And I know
So
for
let me
some
tell
of
you
y'all,
this.
the amount of money that y'all are making, let me make my point real quick and I'm going to give you the floor. The amount
Yes,
of
sir.
money that y'all are making is the amount of money that we know that y'all wouldn't make any other way. If you getting $3,000 for a cell phone and all this other stuff, that's some serious paper that these people are making. Now, would you guys be able to match that? No. So you're going to have to fire people. But whenever you bring in people in, it got to be in the sense of what the job entails and pay them accordingly. They need more money. They do. I don't know about people, like when it comes down to the police officers, listen, they're using all kind of power of authority in order to make extra money. Like, let's just be real. They not just using the regular different means. We know that. So I don't know what you guys can give them to match them not to be corrupt without firing corrupt people. But there's got to be something that is a base that we can hold them accountable while saying, now, look, y'all are getting this. It's no way you should be doing this. So then we can hold them accountable. But right now, we can hold them accountable for being wrong. But gee, y'all, they not getting paid. The teachers are not either. But that's another thing. That's another story. But these people are not making money, but they're doing such a dangerous job. So I don't know, to be honest with you. What would you
So
take?
The reason I bring that up is this. I want everyone to realize this. I think that anybody out there risking their life, and first of all, I don't know if you can put a money value on risking someone's life, but I personally would love to see cops and military people make $100,000 a year. I would personally love to see that. Is it possible? Of course, what I did was different. I didn't control raises. That's what the commissioners did. So politicians control how much people make. But let me make sure you understand this. Corruption really doesn't come from when people say, well, I don't make a certain amount of money, so that's why. That's not really the case. There are people who, no matter how much money you pay them, if they see an opportunity to make more, they're going to. It's called greed. Remember this. People often think that things like power and alcohol and money changes people, and it doesn't. All it does is enhance who you are.
Who you are, yeah.
Exactly. Now, I got two friends I won't name, and I love both of them to death. Both of them didn't have money at one point in their life. Both of them are very wealthy now. One of them, when he got wealthy, he went to the strip club and started throwing money in the air. The other one started flying to Africa and feeding kids, and he's Caucasian. Gotcha. The money didn't change them. That's just who they were. One of them always wanted to be a baller, and one of them was watching TV and probably in tears saying, I wish I could feed these kids. And once they got the money, they did what they always wanted to do. It didn't change them. It just enhanced who they were or whatever. Well,
I agree with that so much. That's awesome.
I agree.
Right. So now when you're dealing with people in certain positions, okay, well, look, I'm going to give you a raise. Okay, you can give them a raise, but depending on how they manage the money, depending on how they want to live, if they want to ball, for lack of a better term, okay, good. I'm making decent money now, but you know what? I can make $3,000 off of a cell phone. I can make more money there. So giving people more money, they deserve more money. Should get more. If you have that job, you deserve to make more money. But that's not going to be the answer to corruption. At the end of the day, I've seen poor people find a wallet and look for the owner, and it was full of cash. And I've seen people who had good jobs say, oh, well, finders keepers, losers weepers. So we're dealing with for lack of a better term, who people are, and then you got to put people in charge who are going to crack down. Some of it, when you run in jail, that's not an easy job. You got to keep some violent people in line that are in the jail, but you also got to keep the people in line who man the jail. And quite frankly, they all got to fear you. The people in the jail got to know they can't kill each other in the jail or you'll deal with it. And the people who work there got to know they can't bring drugs in there or abuse people, or they know you'll deal with it. It's not an easy job. You got to rule it with an iron fist, because you got to have just as much control over those officers as you have over the inmates. I don't think one is more equally dangerous than the other. They both come with problems. And sometimes you got to make sure that you weed out those that will be the problem and bring others in. And of course, you make a lot of enemies when you do that. But if you want a jail free from corruption, that's the only way to do it. But the top got to be uncorrupt first. Because if he's corrupt, he's going to allow it all to go on. But the problem is it's one of those problems that you just can't throw money at.
No, but we talking about maybe the privileges. So like we said earlier, like, if we know cell phones is an issue, then we got to give the inmates more phone privileges, right? There's just ways around it. Now, I'm not going to say that y'all got to give them drugs to beat the drugs, but it's just other little things that got to come around when it comes down to when we say about the money. Right, the money got to come and be spent in different ways. So that means that if we got to put a phone in every cell, then it need to be a phone in every cell. So if it need to be, it need to be things in place so that there could be less things for them to be corrupt over in order for them to make the extra money. Because you're right, people are
I agree.
greedy, period. And they will do things to make extra money, regardless of how much money they making. You're right. They could be making 100,000. If they can make 150,000, they're gonna do that. But what we saying is that there's a way to do certain things. Like we know that people are making a whole lot of money off of food that they get in there. We know that.
Yeah.
So then we know, all right, bet. So listen, let's offer better alternatives for food. That'll give different things. I'm just saying it's gotta be
I
different
agree.
things, right? Not just the way that we gotta pay people a little bit more because they're
I
not going to be able to make as more with the extra hustle that they doing because you guys are cutting it out. But that's what I'm saying. Like using it as in a way to say, all right, what are the things that people are making the extra money off of? Now we know that the bigger guys are making money for the ratings. So what are the little guys making money? I don't mean little as in stature. I'm just talking about the people who are in the inside, the officers in the jails, in the how they would. Okay, so let's work it like that, and let's be honest about that. But that's where honesty don't come into play, because there are ways that they could do it. But we just got to get the inmates more privileges. But then that's like we want to make it so they don't want to come back to jail.
There's a balance. There's a yin yang
Yeah,
balance, and we
it's
got to
a
find
it's a
that balance.
balance.
It's a
Yeah,
balance, and that's what we
yeah.
need. Somebody with the wisdom of Solomon to come in, because you can't, you can be too hard and you can be too soft, too yin, too yang. And I agree. I mean, I think the phone is one of the biggest travesties of the jail. When you think of how much money that people spend just to talk to people on the phone. And now
Jeez.
the feds actually cracked down on that one time because they were
Right.
charging an astronomical amount a minute just to talk to someone on the phone, and they cut that down. But even what they cut it down to is still very, very expensive. Now, during COVID, there were COVID funds that was used in federal institutions so that people could speak for free. And that money is about ran out right about now, is my understanding. But before then, in order for you to talk to someone, you got to call them collect, and they have to pay a particular amount of money. And that amount of money used to be ridiculous. So imagine a grandmother, a mother that's barely making it. She wants to talk to her son, but can't.
Right.
And
It's restricted. And it's so
right,
sad because they're astronomical numbers that Securus, GTL, Jail ATM, those are all the facilities that are making money off of already the most vulnerable people that are imprisoned. And yeah, we're talking about just in my county jail, over $1 million a month that impacted families
easily,
are
easily.
funneling into, easily into the jail, into Securus, into, I'm a data nerd. So I look at all those numbers and it would blow you away. It's crazy. And taxes, like application fees, coming intake fees, just for coming in the prison, you get charged $35 per inmate here in Lancaster.
And
That's
what's really sad
crazy.
about the whole thing? What's really sad about the whole thing is, if everyone in jail was a murderer, a child molester, and it was clear cut, okay, that's one thing. But the system is so broken. There are a lot of people in there that ever since 2008, I was never sure if they were guilty or not, because that was my first taste of how far prosecutors would go to lie. And if they would lie on me, I know they'll lie on a regular guy. But let's break this down. What is prison really designed for? Prison is designed to keep dangerous people away from society. That's what a jail is really supposed to be for. A person is dangerous, and if he's out there, he's going to rape, rob, or murder. So in order to keep our kids safe, in order to keep us safe, this person has to be locked away for the safety of the community. A lot of these people that are in prison aren't a threat. Let me tell you a story, and not just things I saw when I was in there, but what I learned when I was a sheriff and what I had to start doing. I met a warden one time that taught me something very valuable when I first became sheriff. He said that when he first took over as warden of the state, he started visiting different facilities. So he went to this one particular maximum security where the life is, and there were guards walking around with rifles, and there were cars patrolling. But when he got inside, there were people with walkers on dialysis, canes or whatever. So he said he remembered asking the people there, he said, why is there so much security here? And they said, well, these are lifers, they're murders or whatever. He said, well, where are they going to go? First of all, I don't see no one here that can get over the wall. And if they did, how are they going to survive? Some can't walk, some in wheelchairs. It becomes a certain point that if you have a lifer, you run in a convalescence home at a certain point. Because once they get 80 or 90 or whatever, you know, who can they hurt at that point?
Right.
So it's something right. So now millions of dollars of taxpayers' money are being used to incarcerate people who they're more of a danger to themselves than anybody else, and they need a convalescence home at that particular point. Chief Greenberg, who probably taught me 70% of what I know, he's in the book. He was a chief of Charleston. He was my first. He's the person that taught me how to fight crime. Legendary. He wrote a book that you need to read 2 times. But he said something I'll never forget. Someone asked him on a show, I think it was 60 Minutes, if I remember correctly, how do you deal with the violent criminals? What's the answer? And he said something very interesting, and it kind of correlates with what the warden told me. He said, well, time. He said, you know, you got a young killer. He's 17, he's 25. But he said, usually, not all the time, but usually when a man gets between 35 and 45, there's a change. So he said, right. I don't know if we should lock people up forever, but there comes a time where he's not thinking about gang banging or whatever like that. He said, some people got to be locked up long enough for the light bulb to click or whatever, and then go from there. But we're at the point now where we're giving out astronomical amount of time to people for crimes that aren't necessarily a threat to society. And then some of these people get to be a certain age when they're there, and they couldn't harm anybody if they wanted to. Now, let's take a person that's committed a financial crime. I'm not saying that they shouldn't be punished, but if someone stole money from me, do I want him in jail for 15 years, or do I want him working the next 15 years and I'm getting 50% of his paycheck to help pay the money that I lost?
Exactly.
Because he's not a threat to society. So I think if we start looking at it logically, well, after I talked to this warden, I walked through my jail and I started asking questions. Like, I saw a guy in a wheelchair. Hey, man, what you in here for? Okay, if he's in there for murder, there's not much I could do. But if this guy is in there for a bad check and he's in a wheelchair, what threat to society is he? He just needs to show up for court. Hey, get him out of here. If he don't show up for court, I'm sure we can find him. He can only run but so fast in a wheelchair. And when I started, and if we start doing common sense stuff like that, we won't have a jail that's as crowded. One man I was incarcerated with was mentally retarded. Now, he was a drug mule, but you could tell anyone could take advantage of this man and tell him to do anything. If I say, hey, Giggles, can you take this and give this to him? He wouldn't even ask me what I'm taking to give. Well, these drug dealers use him as a drug mule. And now he's serving like 20 some years in jail. Obviously, mentally retarded. Obviously, can't really think. Was he a drug mule? Yes. Does he need to be dealt with? Yes. But is incarcerating him really solving the problem? Is it really protecting society? If locking up drug mules and drug dealers for 15 and 30 years solved the problem, then we shouldn't have no drugs now. Because I was in there with a whole lot of drug dealers serving 20 and 30 years, and the jail was full of drugs. And now that I'm back out here, I don't see any less drugs.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So look, let's do this, man, because we need people to get your book. Right, because I think there are a lot of parents dealing with corruption on the end of the police. I think there are a lot of inmates that feel the same way as the inmates that you had the privilege of frequenting. I know it didn't seem like a privilege going through that particular scenario, but I mean, yeah, and I'm only using this word because I'm looking at it from the site of purpose. right?
Yes, sir.
That's what I'm looking at it from. I understand that it was unfortunate and it wasn't a good situation to go through. It was probably all kind of different emotions, but if we look at it from the spiritual sense of purpose, you were able to talk to, like you call them, professors, right? And people who you gave the adjective to that other people who just only gives them the criminal adjective and gives them that title of whatever it is the reason why they're in there. That's what people call them. You didn't call them that, right? So you even call them teachers and different things like that. And I guess the professor is a teacher, but however that go. You just gave them the adjectives that, let people know that they were more than just what they were in there for. But in the sense of that, I think people need to get your book and get to know more about you, because I think your story is more interesting. I mean, it's not, but so much we can get into tonight. We're gonna have to do a part 2 with you. We're gonna have to get you on a panel with other people, because your message needs to get out more. And Meg, the same thing with you. Like, we've been talking for this has been almost a year. It's going on at least a year that me and you've been communicating back and forth about all kind of different cases. You have been involved with helping. You have gotten me to speak to people who I'm thankful that they had them cell phones. I ain't gonna say no names because I don't
Right.
want them going through and saying, yeah, I ain't gonna do that,
Right. We can't do them
but
like
I
that.
nah, not at all. But I know they be watching and they're gonna be like, yo, good looking out, Rod. Yeah.
Yes.
Now I know they trying to take y'all cell phone. I'm not even gonna say. But yeah, I've been able to talk to a lot of people. So I'm thankful that you guys chose the platform to come on tonight. Thank y'all so much. I'm sure the listeners and the viewers are got a lot out of this conversation tonight. I also saw that the chat was jumping. A lot of people saw everything that was going on the screen. It's so amazing to have healthy dialogue about things that's so serious like this. From us having the dialogue on the screen to all of y'all that was having a dialogue in the chat, um, there's a lot more work that needs to be done. And I hope that the people that are watching tonight and the people who will watch the playbacks and stuff like that actually reach out to the both of these people, right? Get more information about the things that they're doing. Try to figure out things. If you have loved ones that are in these particular positions, or they all over the county, country. It's not the same thing is going on everywhere. So let's get more information out, okay? Let's get more things in the tank for people to understand that people care about them. And let's do more, right? To the families out there that's going to watch this. Let's do more. We're trying to make sure that we keep our people out of the system. Let's do more of that. Let's do more celebrating or keep finding ways that we can keep people out the system, because the money is the reason why people are in jail,
Right.
and the corruption that's going on in jail is because of money. There's things that deal with love and theft and all these other things that people do. Like, we know that, right? And then we know that there's some different people out here that do different things to people. But for the most part, like you said, Vic, you was in there with drug dealers. If they was selling drugs, it was for the paper. There's so many things that people are doing for money. We got to find ways to change that mindset, right? Because these are some of the most brilliant people in the world who are now sitting in here in a place that they should not be, because they didn't look at other alternatives for the way that they need to make money. Because there's millions of people making millions of dollars and they're not risking their lives to do it. So thank y'all so much for coming on. So before we get out of here, I need Vic and I need Meg. I need y'all to go. Vic, so let's start with you. Tell everybody how they can find you and how they can get your book and the whole nine.
Sure. My email is vigilantesheriff@hotmail.com. The book Vigilante Sheriff is on Amazon and Barnes and Noble, and that's the audio book. I'm not the audio. I'm sorry, the ebook and the paperback. There will be an audio forthcoming in the next 30 days, and I really enjoy being on your show. I enjoy the conversation. I look forward to coming back. I don't know what this issue is with the camera. I would, I'm gonna try and get that fixed, and hopefully, if you have me back on, then everyone can see my face, and we can go from there.
Oh yeah, we're gonna have you back because we it's other topics that we gotta discuss. I want to bring you back for a panel. Me and Meg, we're gonna talk about it and we're gonna coordinate it. Because like I said, there's more work that needs to be done in the background. And then there are people who really need to know certain type of information, and I think that would be great. So yeah, we're gonna definitely get you back on. So
All right,
Meg,
great
tell
show, man.
everybody.
Great show.
Thank you, man. I
Great
appreciate you, brother.
conversation.
Yeah, definitely. So
Thanks so
Meg,
much.
what's going on? Let everybody know how they
Yes.
can find you.
So you can reach out to me, mkeller@hdrattorneys.com. If you have a whistleblower case or you have a civil rights institutional or unconstitutional, like being treated as an inmate or anything like that, contact me. My email is megmckeller88@gmail.com. You can find me on Facebook, Meg Keller, and just love on each other, guys. Thank you so much for this platform and this opportunity. And I love you, Raw, man. Take it
Yeah,
easy,
definitely,
everybody.
all day. And I appreciate y'all for coming on for real and then being able to chop it up with the people, giving you guys this insight and everything else that go along with it, because we need this information out here, right? Because there's so many people who feel like they're alone. There's people in these positions that we know that are in there unjustly. They didn't do the things that they're in there for. And we all know that because of what happened not too long ago in Missouri with the execution of an innocent man. And, I just have a heart for people who go through things, right? Unjustly. I have a heart for children that I feel like they're the number one that should be protected. I think that so many different things that go on in life it just needs more protection. I'm just an advocate for men being men. I mean, I'm not talking about sexual preference and all that. I don't care about all that. I'm talking about men being men and being rightfully so in the positions that we were born to be in and being okay with accepting that as a role. So again, thank y'all so much for coming on the platform. To all of y'all that watched tonight, thank y'all so much for watching. Thank y'all for everybody that jumped in the comment section and jumped on the comments. Thank you. If this is your first time watching tonight, please subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell. We only have a few more shows before the year is out, and then we'll be on season 3, and we're going to open up season 3 the same way, and we're going to keep bringing this information out to the people, all right? So you two guys don't go nowhere just yet. We're going to talk a little bit off camera, but to everyone else, thank y'all so much for tuning in tonight. Thank y'all for showing up each and every week, and as I always say, if you don't believe in yourself, nobody else will. So until next week, peace.